asking blue pill, red pill, corporate press, I've had my fill. I'm just a simple chap, believing in my own will. Web fire, math, evil scheming, this is no drill. Haters masking boosted, but still with no chill. Need to come and take it if you wanna mess with my hill. We've been 3D printing, set and ready for that ghost kill.
Hello, Canada, and welcome to another episode of the Maple Pill. As always, I'm your host, Matt McKeever, and the Emergencies Act has been revoked. Seems like just a day or two ago, we, voted it through Parliament. It seems like we're in absolutely the clown timeline. I know Owen Benjamin often refers to this as the age of hilarious, and I'm starting to lean more and more into him being correct in that regards. But before we jump into tonight's stories, obviously we're going to be hitting upon the Emergencies Act, some updates around that. We're also going to be talking about some of the financial sanctions that were going on. We're not going to be talking about financial sanctions in regards to Russia, but in regards to the trucker convoy. And finally, I've got a full course of pills. So we'll be going through, the blue pill, the red pill, the black pill, the clown pill, and finally the white pill. And I've got a couple memes for you guys as well. But before we even jump into any of that stuff, I just want to kind of chat a little bit, I guess, about, some theories on why it seems like the Canadian government's doing such an about face in regards to the Emergencies Act. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions. Let me know, your hot takes or your conspiracies in the chat in regards to why Trudeau is essentially revoking them literally just the moment he seems to have got them approved. Now, mind you, they haven't gone through the Senate yet. So kind of a hierarchy of likelihood of reasons for why this is all playing out. In my opinion, the most likely one is he's getting polls back, and the polls are showing, hey, if you ever want to be remembered even with any sort of fondness in Canada, or if you even just want the Liberal Party to survive your reign, maybe we need to rein in the tyranny here in Canada. Again, these are all just my theories, but that seems like the most likely one. That the pollsters are coming back, and the Liberals and Justin Trudeau in particular are seeing how unpopular they're becoming. Again, this is just my hot take here, but the second most likely theory, in my opinion, is that, right now it was being read in the Senate, and maybe, Justin Trudeau was hearing through back channels. It wasn't actually going to make it through the Senate. Now, to be honest, I kind of feel like it probably would have ended up happening. We've chatted about this in previous episodes before of the Maple Pill, but really at this point in time, the Senate is honestly just a rubber stamp for everything Parliament does. We've even heard a few senators come out and say how they don't like the fact that Parliament seems to essentially just expect them to rubber stamp every single measure that they put through. Now, this next one is going to be a little bit more down the conspiracy rabbit hole, but I think that this technically qualifies as a white pill conspiracy, and I'm almost 100% joking in this regards, but who knows? Anything's possible in this timeline. What if it turns out that Justin Trudeau is the greatest freedom fighter in all of human history, and in particular Canadian history? And just let me finish here, guys. So what I've been thinking about this afternoon, as I saw the Emergencies Act being revoked by Justin Trudeau, I couldn't help but think, this feels like political suicide for the NDPs and Liberals, right? Why put it through so hard and then immediately do an about face? And so here's my theory. I don't think we've ever seen a better, salesperson for Bitcoin in the history of Bitcoin. I think that this has been the absolute biggest orange pill in the history of Bitcoin. And I think Justin Trudeau is maybe, to thank for that. In addition, maybe he's actually like a Manchurian candidate, not for the CCP, but in the CCP in the World Economic Forum. So again, maybe he literally is playing I don't know, what would this be, 30D chess? And he wanted to expose all the craziness and all the corruption going on in Canadian politics. And that's why he's done things like the We Charity scandal, why he's, pressured former justice ministers on the SNC Lavalin scandals, why, he has invoked the Emergencies Act, why he decided to freeze protesters' bank accounts, why they decided to reach out to GoFundMe to get them deplatformed, why he hasn't spoken out about the Give, Send, Go hack and essentially denounced that. Maybe it turns out that he's literally just playing 30D chess, and we're all, myself included, 29 steps behind him in that regard. So just want to throw out there, maybe this is literally the greatest white pill of all time, and Justin Trudeau wanted to make sure he destroyed the Liberal and NDP parties through his reign here. So There you go. That's about as white pill as I can make this. Now, let's jump into tonight's stories. So first thing, let's do some updates in regards to what's going on. So as I mentioned at the top here, this is from National News Watch. Trudeau revokes Emergencies Act now that Ottawa protest is over. A reminder, as always, links to everything we're going to talk about in the video description down below, although you're not going to find any links to my white pill conspiracy theory on Justin Trudeau. But again, anything's possible in the time of hilarious. Now, what I did want to highlight, and this is like wild, and I can't even believe that we've seen politicians, members of parliament, as well as now senators, essentially spreading what, in my opinion, is 100% fake news and feeling so confident in doing it. Now, in my opinion, the only reason they feel so confident in doing this is simply because they expect that they're going to be the ones writing the history books in the future. And these little snippets, these little quotes, the fact that this stuff is, being registered in both Parliament as well as the Senate, will be used as cannon fodder decades from now to prove about, the same way that they're essentially gaslighting everyone on January 6th, they're going to want to gaslight everyone on the trucker convoy. Now, again, you guys can listen to the senator's full ramblings in the video description down below, but I'm just going to jump about halfway into it. And she's technically non-affiliated, but I don't know. I sense some biases when she's breaking down her perspective on everything in relation to the trucker convoy, but don't take my word for it. Let's listen to this crazy lady.
Potentially far more sinister. To extrapolate outwards from what we have seen in these past weeks, by which I refer to the border blockades and deliberate crippling of infrastructure, to weapon seizures and conspiracy to commit murder charges in Coutts, Alberta, to the occupation and siege of Ottawa, the documented organizational involvement of active and former military, police, as well as individuals known to have deep connections to extremist groups, publicly proclaiming that they want a racial war, publicly proclaiming that if there isn't this kind of insurrection, then, quote, we will all soon be forced to speak Hebrew, approximate quote.
That's literally the craziest shit I possibly have heard throughout this entire trucker convoy. That they wanted a race war in Canada. And I don't know if you've looked at the demographics in Canada, but we're not nearly as diverse as people would make you think, particularly depending upon how you define diversity. But that doesn't even matter. I've not at one point in time heard anything, even the mainstream media, even CBC hasn't talked about the truckers wanting a race war. And yet this senator brings it up. But that's technically not the craziest thing she said. I'd like to think I consume a lot of conspiracy theories because, hey, I don't mind going into crazy corners of the internet and reading things and then coming to my own conclusions. But I've never heard one single conspiracy theory that involves Jewish people wanting to make us speak Hebrew. There's lots of conspiracy theories around, them controlling the media or the banks or other things. But for them to literally want us all to speak Hebrew, honestly, I don't even know what to say to this. Unless she's got receipts to back up these crazy statements, I kind of feel like she should be institutionalized, not part of one of the most important institutions, the Senate here in Canada. But again, link to the entire crazy quote in the video description down below. That's just wild. Again, if it turns out I'm wrong here, I guess my biggest surprise is that I didn't hear this first from the CBC or CTV News or Global News or any of the other mainstream corporate press legacy media puppets, because I feel like they would have jumped on that if that was even close to a thing. But let's keep rolling here. This one's from Blacklock's reporter. So evidence of sedition is secret. And this stuff really does frustrate me when governments say that they've got information that they can't release to us, but we just need to trust them and give them emergency powers. So Mark Gold, Quebec government representative in the Senate, Gold claimed cabinet had secret reports justifying its February 14th order proclaiming a public emergency. This is highly factual and contextual questions which necessarily relies upon information that may not be shared in the context of our debate, said Senator Gold. In that regard, I think the government is owed a certain degree of deference vis-a-vis the security assessment it has made. Why? when literally throughout this entire thing, Justin Trudeau and his government was telling us that this is a fringe minority that should just be ignored. And then all of a sudden it turned into a much larger grassroots movement. And now they've got secret security things that we just need to trust them on. He goes further on. I cannot share, and the government cannot share and should not share the intelligence it may have received that helped inform their decision, said Gold. I mean, that goes without saying. Why? Why does that go without saying? Why, if you had, proof of sedition here in Canada, could you not share it with the general public? Further on, he was asked essentially a question: will the review committee have access to unredacted security information required to do its job? That's a very good question, replied Sander Gold. The short answer is no. So not only do they definitely not trust the general public with this information, but they don't even trust the senators with this information. Just bizarre, to say the least, in my opinion. Now moving on, this is from the National Post. So Senate growing frustrated by pressure to rubber stamp Emergency Act. Senators are being asked to make decisions on the basis of secret information for a crisis that is not visible. Yeah, that feels very on the nose in regards to what's been going on this entire period of time. Another one here from Blacklock's reporter: feared descent to cost dollars. So again, we covered this more in length yesterday in regards to the Canadian government essentially tiptoeing very carefully in their language when it comes to freezing out bank accounts, right? We heard them say the RCMP did not provide a list of donors to the banks. Well, that doesn't actually mean that banks aren't freezing donor bank accounts. It literally just means the RCMP did not provide a list to the banks. Friedland said orders to freeze accounts would apply to active participants in illegal assemblies. However, Friedland's department yesterday confirmed Freedom Convoy sympathizers who never attended any demonstrations but donated as little as $20 since February 15th could be subject to a bank freeze. So again, why should we trust our government when they'll essentially tell us we're crazy for one thing, and then when we call them on it, they come back with language that's essentially non-committal in nature. And then later, their deputies come out and are like, oh yeah, totally, that could happen. Direct quote here: has there been any direction or counsel given by government to financial institutions as to what kind of information they can retain or should retain, or whether they should destroy information, or how they should treat people on a go-forward basis after the resolution of this emergency that precipitated use of the act, asked New Democrat MP Daniel Blakey. And the direct quote here is, I have not had such discussions, replied Isabel Jacquez, Assistant Deputy Minister of Finance. So again, they're very particular in their language here with non-answers. And this is just wildly frustrating in my mind because, again, I don't think we're ever going to really know what all played out here. But absolutely, the mainstream media is going to gaslight us. And this is just my opinion, but absolutely, they're going to gaslight us in the future and say that we're all crazy and conspiracy theorists for saying that, someone's grandma who bought a $50 t-shirt, or someone who donated $20, or a business owner who donated $500. And these are all actually like real stories that I've shared within the last week on the Maple Pill that have been covered in the mainstream press. They're going to tell us that we're crazy and that never actually happened. Or they'll say like that probably never really happened. Again, this is from True North. Trudeau government says $20 donation to Convoy enough to freeze accounts. Again, links to all these articles in the video description down below. Just want to highlight this. Viva Frei recounts brutal police crackdown on Ottawa protesters. So I know a lot of you guys have been looking for good Canadian sources on what's going on. I think Viva's doing a fantastic job on his channel and really encourage you guys to check it out. And here's an interview he did with Steve Bannon. So again, encourage you guys to jump into that if you're interested in watching. Now, I thought this was a really great synopsis of what's going on here in Canada. So Canada's banks begin to unfreeze the accounts of people who were going to overthrow the state last week. So again, let's parse this out. So literally a week ago, we were in such an emergency state that we needed emergency powers that have never before been used in Canada in order to freeze bank accounts of protesters. But within a week, we can undo it. And these are the same, this is the second part of the tweet now, the ones that were lying about their accounts being frozen. Because again, the mainstream media and politicians said, no, this is fake news, like, don't believe it. The conservative members of parliament, they're questioning these things, they're conspiracy theorists. But again, you're now like essentially reversing all your actions without really explaining why. What's changed? and those accounts are unfrozen now. Yeah, we live in the clown timeline, people. I don't know what else to tell you. From CTV News, banks begin unfreezing accounts of Freedom Convoy supporters, finance official. So again, if you guys want to check out the article, link in the video description down below. But it's so bizarre. And now I understand people on that are pro lockdowns, govern me harder, daddy, believe everything the mainstream media says. They're going to complain that I'm complaining about this, because they're going to say, hey, I thought you said freezing bank accounts was bad. So why aren't you happy now that we're unfreezing the bank accounts? No, that's like cutting my finger off and then giving me back my finger and be like, yo, we gave you your finger back. What else do you want from us? I would have preferred you never cut off my finger in the first place, actually. That would have been a much preferred treatment. And again, it's bizarre, and I don't think we're ever going to fully understand what exactly went on here. It's a net positive that the government's backing down at this point in time. I think if I wanted to be super black-pilled on this, I would say that the government realized that they weren't going to get the violent reactions that maybe they wanted by enacting these measures. So they hope by immediately doing a reversal or an about face, that hopefully the truckers come back and they can show again that the Emergencies Act was effective, because, hey, when we did it, we got them out. And the moment we undid it, they came back. Again, that's maybe just a little too black-pilled, but it's hard to make sense of what our government does. And technically, our government's supposed to represent us. And so if they're representing us, do I need to draw the conclusion that my average Canadian fellow citizen is just crazy, that they're just schizophrenic and they're just randomly doing things that I can neither predict nor make reasonable assessments of after the fact? Like, what logical framework are they working within? This is from the Toronto Star. Don't comment on frozen bank account claims until they are verified, Conservative MPs advise. Conservative MPs have been urged to verify claims about bank accounts frozen under the government's Emergency Act power and send them to the opposition leader's office for review before commenting publicly, according to a note obtained by the Star. Now, I understand in theory why the Conservative Party would want to try and filter all this, because they're not going to want to end up in a gotcha moment where the Liberals can say, hey, one of your MPs commented on something that didn't happen. But at the same time, if members of parliament are receiving complaints from their citizens that they're supposed to represent, that their bank accounts are being frozen, I understand that in theory some citizens might lie about that, but I think that that's still worth asking, right? And asking for a quick resolve to it, right? Like, hey, just tell me fast, yes or no. Did that grandma have her bank account frozen? Did that business owner who donated $500, right? Can you tell me who everyone was that, and like, I'm not literally saying you need to tell me, but can you tell the members of parliament that are concerned on behalf of their constituents? Yeah, that doesn't seem like too much to ask at this point in time. And again, I feel like all this is just going to be swept under the rug now that the government's done an about face. From CBC News, protests has cost City of Ottawa more than $30 million. Mayor says federal provincial partners have indicated they will help pay. Again, do I believe that this has cost the city money? Absolutely. And again, in a perfect world, would that not happen? Absolutely. But again, in a perfect world, the government would have never taken away our freedoms and rights in the first place. We would have been locked down for essentially 2 years. We wouldn't have mask mandates, vaccine passports, and all the other bullshit that they continuously try to force upon us. Continuing to roll on here. So this is from Reuters. Inspired by Canadian truck protests, People's Convoy heads to Washington. So this is interesting. Again, I haven't spent enough time digging into the People's Convoy in the United States. It's a little bit different, in my opinion. Again, if they want to protest, they should have the right to do so. But I think that the situation in America is a fair bit different than what has been going on here in Canada. Certainly, there's a lot more states that are a lot more open and free. There's also just a much diverser set of reactions from each individual state government compared to what occurred here in Canada. But I did want to highlight, this is from Rebel News, U.S. truckers plan to descend on Washington, D.C. in protest convoys ahead of Biden's State of the Union. We're not coming there just to starve them, an organizer reportedly said. We're going to choke you like a boa constrictor and you'll have nothing. Can you imagine if one of the Canadian organizers had said that, or even just a man on the street in Ottawa had said that and been caught by mainstream media saying that? Like, I feel like Justin Trudeau would have been asking for UN troops to come in. I feel like he would have asked Biden to nuke the truckers at this point in time, based upon the level of reaction we've seen to bouncy castles and hot tubs. But But let's keep rolling here. So getting into the first blue pill story of the day, we chatted about this briefly. Yesterday, there was the Rideau Center Mall was shut down. Man charged in firearm incident that shut mall by Parliament. So again, just wanted to kind of let you guys give an update on that because at the time there was very little information. Police say a 50-year-old from Ottawa shoplifted from a store around midday and then pulled out a firearm when confronted by mall security, which seems crazy. Again, it's interesting that it happened on the first day of the mall reopening. At the same time, half the article is spent talking about the truckers and how the truckers shut down the mall. Understand that that was a preemptive move made by the mall. In addition, that was suggested by the federal government to shut down businesses in the downtown core. So I don't think that we should be painting with such a broad brush that the truckers forced the mall to shut down. In fact, a lot of truckers went to the mall in order to be patrons of the mall, but they weren't wearing masks, and the mall said that was a safety hazard. Now, CTV News, so many questions. Calgary's mayor challenges use of lethal force in the weekend police response. I just kind of this because a lot of the headlines and quick hot takes I saw on Twitter, I think we're jumping to conclusions that this was police brutality. Again, in general, I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to the individual citizen. So we need to have a thorough inquiry into this, get to the bottom of it, figure out what actually went on. But based upon what's mentioned deeper in this article, witnesses say a distressed Toole, who was the man that was killed, advanced on officers with a knife during Saturday's standoff and was shot 4 times with bullets after less lethal rounds failed to thwart him. When the situation escalated, he did not survive. A police service dog was injured by Toole during the encounter and was taken to an animal hospital in life-threatening conditions. CPS officials confirmed no officers were injured during the response. He also did have a knife during this attack. So, yeah, I don't know. Hopefully we'll get to the bottom of it and justice will be served. If the officers weren't wearing body cameras, again, this is just one more argument for body cameras. In my opinion, the more documentation whenever something bad happens, the better, right? That doesn't mean that, one camera angle is going to solve all discrepancies about a situation, right? But certainly the more information we have, the easier it is to make a decision. Continuing to go through our blue pills here. I just kind of wanted to highlight this. I don't even know why this showed up on the front page of CBC when I was scrolling this morning because it's from 2020, but it was just kind of, I guess it was like a time machine. It took me back in time. So this was a mother talking about, I'm trying to help my daughter navigate COVID-19 conspiracy theories and it's exhausting. She talks about, what was it again? Like the giant murder hornets. Whatever did happen to the giant murder hornets? Like it seemed like for a month there, the mainstream media, particularly in the US, was pushing hard on these giant murder hornets. Seems like they just kind of disappeared. She talks about COVID vaccines containing microchips and things of that nature. But I did think that the very first line they started with was interesting. Did you know that wearing a medical mask ups the risks of catching COVID-19? I was like, well, again, there's an asterisk to this, and this isn't a hill I'm going to try and die on. But I was like, I'm pretty sure I remember a 2020 CNN article that said that. Masks may actually increase your coronavirus risk if worn improperly, Surgeon General warns. This was from March 2nd, 2020. Again, reminder that by wearing a COVID mask, that literally means touching the mask while it's on your face. I don't know if you've ever actually watched an individual wearing a COVID mask, but the vast majority of them are constantly picking at it. Sometimes they're pulling it down, sometimes they're pulling it up, all those different things. And understand when we're actually looking at the effectiveness of masks, a lot of the studies that come out as strong proponents of masks and their effectiveness often assume essentially a perfect enforcement or a perfect use case from the individuals wearing the mask. So they never touch it. You wear the mask when you're in the car. So literally the moment you leave your house, you're masked until the moment you get home, you're masked. So again, I'll just leave you guys with that. Again, I'm not trying to argue that masks are an absolute danger to your health or anything like that. I personally do think that they're bullshit. But I'm not saying that, that this mother was wrong for trying to dissuade that conspiracy theory with her daughter, but it's just kind of funny. Again, the narrative has evolved so much over the last 2 years. Now, let's get into our first red pill of the day. Now, remember, we were talking about the GasLink attack where employees were essentially attacked by 20 individuals, If I remember correctly, they said they were wearing black masks, and it turns out like they were wearing like full like bodysuits. It's really bizarre. But this is more violent. This one incident is more violent than anything we saw from Canada's truckers. Now, there's no sound, so again, when I play this, don't worry about your audio not working. But here it is. So essentially, an employee in the truck, you can see someone walking up with an axe, another one with a hatchet. They're hitting the side of the truck that he's in. We can see them trying to block the truck or walk in front of the truck as the trucks are trying to pull out. Again, we can see more of it being hit. For some reason, they turn a strobe light on the person. I don't know if they're just trying to induce a seizure of the driver or what here. But again, very bizarre. And yeah, I can see how this would be a harrowing incident when people dressed up like they're, I don't know, from a horror movie, approach you with axes and flashing lights, spray painting the windows, hitting the truck again. Now we're going to see them shooting flares. So that was a flare actually that was just shot from a flare gun at the truck. So again, very bizarre. I'm interested to see how this narrative evolves, but this was certainly far more violent than anything we saw during the trucker convoy. Now from the Globe and Mail, criminal anthropologist says Alberta at heart of unrest trucker protests. I encourage you guys to read this entire article. I'm not going to take aim at the entire article, but it is interesting how they focus on the narrative that Alberta has been negatively impacted throughout COVID, the lockdowns and restrictions, and that, it's slowed down progress in the oil industry, that a lot of farmers are struggling to get enough feed for their animals and things of that nature. Essentially, all that discontent is leading to individuals wanting to act out, speak out, and stand up against the government. Now, the only thing that I'm going to really take aim with in this article is they don't actually draw the conclusion that the last 2 years of government policies have essentially driven these individuals into this situation, which doesn't seem like that big of a stretch in my opinion, but the anthropologist completely overlooks that and just focuses on arguably demonizing this group in Alberta. Continuing, this is from the Post-Millennial. Trudeau's anti-hate bill will allow people to preemptively report Canadians for hate speech. This is really concerning. Honestly, even just the concept of hate speech is very concerning. Maybe I'm just old-fashioned and grew up in an era of sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. But understand that proposed hate speech legislation would allow people to take others to court if they suspect that someone will post content deemed hateful online. So Bill C-36 states that a person may, with Attorney General's consent, lay in information before a provincial court judge if the person fears on reasonable grounds that another person will commit A, an offense under Section 318, advocating genocide, or subsection 3119, inciting or promoting hate, promoting hatred. Now, those don't feel quite apples to apples to me in the first place. Again, in general, I would just say no. Hate speech doesn't exist, and we shouldn't even end up on this slippery slope. But the difference between advocating genocide and promoting hate or promoting hatred is, I think that there's a decent chasm between those two aspects. And I think it is concerning that the Canadian government wants to control our language to such an extent. And if anything, we should see the enactment of the Emergencies Act that we're experiencing up until today when the government decided to randomly do an about-face and revoke it as a precursor to where this could lead us to, right? How long until just not towing the government or the administration or the party in power's preferred political views is considered hate speech, right? Literally today, and we're going to cover this later on, but I guess not even just this one story. Let's take a step back here. At this point in time, within the last year, I've read articles that essentially associate white supremacy and being anti-fat, right? Or thinking that, people with a healthy BMI are healthier than fat people. We've seen it in regards to people that are pro-freedom, that's a sign of white supremacy. That people that want to be on time, timeliness is now considered a sign of white supremacy. People that want to actually do shit, right? Literally just showing up on time and doing your job is considered a sign of white supremacy. Now, these are edge case scenarios often that I'm highlighting, but what we often see is these crazy, in my opinion, crackpot theories eventually somehow make it into the mainstream because first, they start in the universities, right? They start with critical race theory being taught in universities, but we then eventually see this spill over into the culture. And as we see the spill over into the culture, we then see it spill over into politics and laws. And I think it's more important than ever before. If you actually want to live in a free Canada, you need to speak out about some of these crazy bills that the Liberals are trying to push through Parliament. All right, enough of that. Let's move on. This is from Zero Hedge. Again, this is really concerning. And the fact that we haven't seen a single Liberal MP or really any Canadian politician denounce what's going on in regards to the doxing of individuals that donated to the Give, Send, Go campaign. Google Maps location data of Freedom Convoy donors post online. So there's literally a map where you can see each individual donor or the vast majority of donors and where they live, where their business is located. And so, for example, here's a screenshot of it in Ontario. Now, one, this doesn't seem like a fringe minority. And two, this should be really concerning. Because how long until someone doxes all the PPC supporters or doxes all the Conservative supporters or doxes any other political party that the Liberals don't agree with? And are we going to see them actually speak out and denounce this, right? Why have we not heard of an investigation in regards to the hacks on Give, Send, Go and the doxing of Canadian citizens? This concerns me greatly to see this sort of thing. You know, I shared on my Instagram stories yesterday. There's literally posters now being put up in Ottawa that list individuals' names that live in Ottawa and their address, stating that they donated to the Freedom Convoy. If you don't see how this is a bad idea, you're willfully blind, and there's no excuse for that. Because just think about it, if the foot was on, or if the shoe was on the other foot, right? Let's say that all of a sudden there's just lists everywhere of individuals that support Black Lives Matter, or individuals that supported any other charity, right? Even individuals that supported that attack on the gas line that I just showed you earlier. There's a huge difference between donating to a charity or a movement and actually participating in illegal activities. And we need to very clearly draw that line. How soon until literally having an employee that participated in the Freedom Convoy is enough to get your business canceled? Not you participating, not you donating, but literally just having an employee do so, right? You paid them. They then turned around and used that money to donate to the Freedom Convoy. Yeah, very concerning. Let's get into some black pills, though. This is wild, in my opinion. Rebel News leaked Canadian Border Services Agency monthly newsletter decries white fragility. The agency's anti-racism email newsletter, Forward Together, was emailed to CBSA's Atlantic Region employees February 23rd, 2022, and was leaked to Rebel News. I was going to read some of the highlights, but I encourage you guys to read the entire article because it's fucking insane. When confronted about race, white people are highly fragile because one will feel that their sense of decency and moral good, not to mention the deeply ingrained sense of superiority, is being threatened. Now, I thought the definition of racism was really just making broad statements about individuals based upon their race. And yet, when it comes to white fragility or white privilege or anti-whiteness, it seems like that's not an issue. Now, again, I'm not even going to get into it. Another quote here: white fragility often looks like anger, fear, or guilt bubbling up to the surface, or behavior such as argumentation, silence, or withdrawal from the situation. So literally, honestly, me even just talking about this is a sign of my white fragility, obviously, according to their definitions, which are just asinine in my opinion. But this is an actual example used in order to make the point about white fragility. I'm coaching a small group of white employees on how racism manifests in the workplace. One member of the group, Karen, is upset. Again, they, of course, had to name her Karen. Is upset about a request from her only colleague of color, Joan, to stop talking over her. Karen doesn't understand what talking over Joan has to do with race. She is an extrovert and tends to talk over everyone. Well, it sounds like Karen just talks over everyone. I don't think that it has anything to do with Joan or Joan being of color. I try to explain how the impact is different when we interrupt across race because we bring our histories with us. While Karen sees herself as a unique individual, Joan sees Karen as a white individual. Being interrupted and talked over by white people is not a unique experience for Joan, nor is it separate from the larger cultural context. See, this sort of mental gymnastics just blows my mind and should honestly be concerning because, again, we're going to see the spill deeper and deeper into our culture, and it's going to bubble up more and more in politics, rules, and regulations. So, like, again, I understand they're saying, like, hey, Karen constantly talks over everyone, but how dare she talk over someone that's, of color or black? Because that's a sign of, whiteness and da 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 da. And again, even if Karen's not doing it specifically to one group, but does it to everyone, she has to be careful around one group. I like the irony in like critical race theory and these anti-whiteness and white fragility and all that is literally you need to treat every single person different based upon their race. Am I crazy? You guys let me know in the comment section. Again, I get it that I'm these people's worst nightmare being a white male born in Canada. But I literally don't get it. I literally do see every single individual or every person as an individual, and they should be judged upon the merits of their individualness, right? What their words and actions relay, not what their skin color says about them. Now from the Globe and Mail, I witnessed the creation of the Emergencies Act. It shouldn't have been invoked in Ottawa. And I encourage you to read this entire article or essay, but essentially this is from David Schneiderman, who's a professor of law at the University of Toronto. He was a research director of the Canadian Civil Liberties Association from 1986 and 89, and he was present during the negotiations around the Federal Emergencies Act in 1987. And one of two full-time lawyers at the Canadian Civil Liberties Association at the time. So again, it's just really interesting when we hear from mainstream media and the government that we always need to trust the experts, but it's only certain experts, right? Like Brian Peckford, the only living signer of the Charter of Freedoms and Rights in Canada, we should ignore him because he disagrees with the government today. David Schneiderman, again, who was present during the drafting of the Emergencies Act, we should ignore him because he disagrees with how the government today enacts it. But listen to all the other experts, as long as they agree with the government's narrative. Now from the Daily Mail, more evidence COVID was tinkered with in a lab. Now scientists find virus contains tiny chunk of DNA that matches sequence patented by Moderna 3 years before pandemic began. A genetic match discovered in COVID's unique furin cleavage site on spike protein matched genetic sequence patented by Moderna for cancer research purposes. Researchers say 1 in 3 trillion chance COVID developed the code naturally. But again, you're probably still sort of a conspiracy theorist if you believe that it was from a lab. And you're definitely racist if you think it came from a Chinese lab. And that's probably just a sign of our white fragility, to be honest. But again, link to that article in the video description down below. I encourage you to check it out. Now from the National Post, Chinese government agency that works with Canadians involved in espionage, federal court affirms. Despite its apparently long-standing efforts to influence and monitor Chinese Canadian, the Overseas Chinese Affairs Office has rarely been publicly called out by authorities here. Now, technically, I almost put this as a white pill, because I think all of us understand that a lot of our institutions in Canada have been captured by CCP, that there's lots of corruption that goes on at the political level in regards to donations. There's lots of CCP organizations and spies and actors throughout Canada and the Canadian government. And so to even just see it talked about in the mainstream media, almost as a white pill, in my opinion, but I get it. The average person, the man on the street, probably hasn't gone deep down it. If you guys want to learn more, please go look and buy Sam Cooper's Willful Blindness. I think that's a fantastic introduction. If you guys need another book recommendation, I encourage you to check out Claws of the Panda. And I'm drawing a blank on what the third book is that I love to recommend here. But if you guys do buy either of those books, please let me know, because I get a huge kick out of knowing that I'm helping spread knowledge and awareness on these issues. Just the other week, a couple people DM'd me saying they finally got their copy of Sam Cooper's Willful Blindness. And again, that puts a big smile on my face. Now from the Toronto Sun, Kinsell, the reporting wrongs about the Ottawa occupation. Now, I agree. There's been a lot of things reported wrong about the occupation in Ottawa. However, this is a very one-sided argument. It focuses on the original rumors, and this was tweeted about by a Fox reporter about the lady who was trampled on by the RCMP horses, that she had died that night. And yeah, that turns out to be fake news, and that was wrong. However, there's a lot of other parts that he focuses on, like the fact that no guns. He claims no guns were ever drawn on Canadians as they were arrested. Well, the New York Times did an article on it. They've got photos showing it. Other reporters and other citizen journalists have photos of Canadian RCMP officers or Canadian or Ottawa police with their guns drawn. And there's one of two things. Either this is willful blindness on Kinsella's perspective, or he's only been reading the mainstream media and just ignoring it because there's lots of photos of it, or he's doing some sort of like language tap dancing here, right? Like maybe the RCMP didn't do it. It was the Ottawa police, or it was a Durham police officer technically that has gun drawn. Like, no, let's focus on facts here. And there's been tons of misrepresentation from the mainstream media, but not at any point does he call it out here. So he only calls out the hypocrisy from one side. When honestly, as far as I'm concerned, when I'm looking at the balance of things, I feel like mainstream media was far heftier in regards to their bullshit and coverage compared to a couple citizen journalists that got it wrong and one Fox News reporter. But again, link to this article in the video description down below. I encourage you guys to check out the full thing. From Rebel News, liberal, and this is just kind of back up my point. Liberals went haywire after New York Times said cops drew guns on Ottawa protesters. The New York Times didn't get the memo to protect the Trudeau narrative at all costs. And so, like, here's literally one video, I think. Oh, actually, so there was a screenshot there of the one officer having his gun drawn on a vehicle. There's photos that the New York Times used in their article. So again, encourage you guys to do your own due diligence on this, but I think it's complete BS to say that the New York Times were absolutely wrong. If you want to take, a disagreement towards the way they framed their headline, it was probably a slightly aggressive headline. However, understand that the mainstream media over the last 3 or 4 weeks here in Canada have used just as aggressive or more aggressive headlines in order to paint the truckers as racist, right? We literally heard earlier on in the show tonight, one senator from Canada saying that the truckers wanted a race war and we're scared that if we didn't start one, that we'd all be speaking Hebrew. That's way more batshit crazy than claiming that police had their guns drawn on Canadian citizens, because police did have their guns drawn on Canadian citizens. Now, let's get over to a couple clown pills. Maybe this is technically a clown pill, maybe it's not. You guys let me know, but I'm going to use this as a bigger talking point here. But John Oliver's attempt to smear a critical race theory critic backfires spectacularly. In Oliver's view, the problem with the opposition to critical race theory is that it is in service to the concept of school choice, and for that, he chooses to paint Christopher Rufio as the boogeyman. And I saw a Twitter thread the other day making the rounds on social media that I think really pointed out, like, why isn't John Oliver, why isn't Stephen Colbert, why isn't Noah Trevor funny, right? I'm not sure if Noah Trevor ever was funny, but I'm pretty sure that, like, Stephen Colbert used to be funny. And there probably was a time when John Oliver was funny as well. But I think the biggest reason that these guys aren't funny is they never actually go after the king. Understand that, like, dating back as far as you look, the idea of the court jester was that there was at least one individual, the fool, the comedian, whatever you want to frame him as, that would point out the foibles and missteps and make fun of the king. And that there's actual real catharsis that occurs there in the general public in regards to being able to get that off their chest. Whereas what we see now is comedians, cartoon pundits and things of that nature, everyone that's in the mainstream media, when it's the conservatives, when it's the red side, they go after them. And when it's the blue side, when it's liberals, when it's progressives, they're mum on the subject matter. No, Justin Trudeau is in power right now. He enacted the Emergencies Act for the first time in Canadian history, and no one wants to call him out on that. Joe Biden can't put together a sentence to save his life, and who knows, like, I wish I had his, Adderall hookup or whatever stimulants they got him on. Like, I would love to even just have a sample of that shit. And yet no mainstream comedian dares call out the king in this day and age, because the king represents progressivism. And that's why these people aren't funny. That's why it feels like every single joke they make misses the mark. That's why when you see Stephen Colbert dancing with needles on screen, telling you to go get your shot and boosted and all that, that you're just like, okay, are you just a propaganda wing now of the government? Anyways, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Were any of those comedians ever funny? Are there any funny comedians in the mainstream media? Has SNL been funny in the last decade? Let me know your thoughts in the comments there, guys. Now, from Post Millennial, activist says diet and exercise is conversion therapy for fat people. And understand, conversion therapy has been outlawed now here in Canada. So how long until, Weight Watchers, I should say, is banned in Canada for being a conversion therapy hotbed? The body positivity activists claim that treating and preventing obesity actually means trying to conversion therapy fat people into becoming thin people. And this is a direct tweet of hers that came out just yesterday. A periodic reminder that treating and preventing obesity actually means trying to conversion therapy fat people into becoming thin people, despite zero evidence this is remotely possible. The fuck are you talking about? Have you never seen a before and after photo of someone that decided to get into shape and take control of their health? Do you literally think that people can't influence the level of weight they have? Do you not understand that calories are a thing? Are calories a sign of whiteness and a sign of whiteness and a sign of conversion therapy as well? This is insane. And yet, the fact that these people feel comfortable saying this out loud and don't expect to be mocked and ridiculed is a sign of the times we live in. We literally live in the clown timeline. It's the age of hilarious. And then finally, this one feels like if it didn't have the blue check mark, I would assume I'm being trolled on this one. Federal Reserve. Would a CBDC, which stands for Central Bank Digital Currency, this is something that I've been warning you guys about for a while now, would a CBDC protect my privacy? For more, federalreserve.gov/whatever. And the statement here is any CBDC would need to strike a balance between safeguarding the privacy rights of consumers and affording the transparency necessary to defer criminal activity. No, that's just like a straight up lie. There's not going to be a single CBDC that actually holds privacy as any sort of priority. It's absolutely about having 100% insight into your financial activities. And understand, right now in Canada, if we had CBDC, the government could just turn off all your currency. They could just immediately seize it. And what we're essentially looking at is either the banks becoming a custodian of your money on behalf of the government, or more likely, eventually, literally just the government becoming a custodian of your money. And look into this. Some of the language that we see from central bankers, that we see from members of the World Economic Forum, from the IMF and things of that nature, the Davos crew, so much of it talks about how you can incentivize behavior if we had a CBDC. For example, if someone's got too much money or you want them to spend their money, we could just create negative interest rates and you just lose 2% of your money every year. So, spend it or lose it. And that's literally the antithesis to everything I talk about and everything any Bitcoiner talks about. What that does is incentivize high time preference, where Bitcoin incentivizes low time preference, right? If the government controls your money completely, your best interest is immediately get out of that, right? Buy anything and everything in sight, because fuck it, it'll at least be a little bit harder for them to seize or take that shit away rather than your CBDC coins. So again, this is beyond parody. This, honestly, at this point in time, the Babylon Bee should just screenshot this and have that be an article. But we do have a white pill. And I've only got a single white pill, but it's a good white pill. So this is a video, a presentation I recently shared in the Problems or Profits Discord under the Resources tab. Really encourage you guys to check it out. It's about a 45-minute talk. It's all about how to become a sovereign individual. It's actually called Citadel Theory, What is Coming and How to Survive It. And I just wanted to highlight this one screenshot from it, but become sovereign, be your own nation, money that can't be stolen, Bitcoin, obviously, war is logistics, food, energy, supply chains, communications, sovereign tech. And they've got a recommendation to follow Laser Hodl on Twitter. Allies, strong networks of everything. This is exactly what I'm trying to do with my Citadel. This is exactly what I'm encouraging you guys to do at whatever level and capacity you're capable of right now in your life. Get control over as much as you can. Do not let the government have any control over your life in areas where you can have control, sovereignty, and make your own decisions. And do not fall for any CBDC tricks. there's only one Bitcoin, and I encourage you guys to really look into it and consider getting started there. And then finally, let's do our meme of the day. And I actually, again, I'm sometimes struggling to find good memes. So if you guys know of some good memes, I actually started a separate meme channel now in the Problems or Problems Discord. So please share any and all memes there, and I'll try and pick one every single night here on the Maple Pill to share with you guys, because I need more humor in my life, obviously, and memes are one of the best ways to do it. And this feels like the perfect meme based upon this. Also made me really want to go back and watch Peaky Blinders. Me telling the grandkids how we beat... I'm going to start over. Me telling the grandkids how we beat a £1 trillion propaganda machine using nothing but memes. It was fucking biblical, mate. It is going to be biblical. We will eventually win. And honestly, memes impact the culture. I've seen people's minds be changed based upon individual memes. Humor is one of the easiest ways to sneak in the truth. And that's why, again, as I talked about earlier on the clown pill, the comedians and the mainstream media just do such a disservice to the entire legacy of what being a court jester, about being a comedian was. It was about being able to and going out and attacking the powerful and trying to take them down a notch. Remind them that they're not our predestined leaders, that they're not the elites, that they're not better than us. That in fact, they're just as capable of making mistakes and missteps as anyone else. But anyways, that's it for tonight's Maple Pill. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Do that, smash the like button, hit subscribe, all that good stuff. If you guys hate watching this show on, the big tech platforms of Facebook and YouTube, I don't blame you. And you guys can always go and watch the replays on Rumble, on BitChute. If you're sharing these with people, feel free to share the BitChute or Rumble links rather than necessarily the Facebook or YouTubes. But again, I just appreciate when you guys take the time to share it. And at the end of the day, what I want the Maple Pill to be is always a reminder that you're not alone, you're not crazy, and there's a lot more of us out there that are seeking the truth, are seeking transparency, and I appreciate you guys for doing so. But before we wrap up, I'm going to check out what's going on in the chat, and we'll go from there. All right, let's get up to the top here. So we've got Farzana, hey, what's up? We've got Al, we've got Graham, Al saying freedom. We've got Donna Jean in the chat. He thought he was going to lose in the Senate. You're likely right. That's probably one of the more probable ones, is that Trudeau thought, either based upon pollsters or based upon what he was hearing in back channels in regards to the Senate, that he was going to lose. At the same time, for the vast majority of the recent history of the Senate, they've honestly just rubber stamped everything that came across their plate. But I kind of like my idea of the white pill conspiracy theory that, in fact, Justin Trudeau is the greatest freedom fighter of all time. But I'm probably crazy. And that's 99.99% a joke, but anything's possible in the age of hilarious. Brad says, I feel like the damage is already done. People don't forget. Yeah, it's important, right? I think at this stage, we can forgive our neighbors. A lot of them have just been brainwashed by mainstream media. A lot of them just don't have the time, the energy, the interest to look into these things, although they really should. They do a disservice to themselves, their children, and future generations by turning a blind eye to this. But we cannot, under any circumstances, in my opinion, forgive the 185 MPs that decide to vote for it. In fact, one of the little threads I forgot to pull on during my conspiracy theory about Justin Trudeau is maybe he just wanted us to know who was all a World Economic Forum, a Great Reset shill in the Canadian government, and by pushing it to a vote, that's how he accomplished it. So now we know 185 people we shouldn't vote for in future elections. Palacy says it might have been pressure from banks. That's not impossible. Banks definitely have a great amount of influence on the government. You get a clown pill, you get a clown pill, everyone gets a clown pill. Love it. Rise above health. Al, he revoked them because of either A, poll numbers, B, the government social media, AI tracking algo is down for maintenance. Brad says that's a deep conspiracy. 100% agree. Possible banking crisis. Yeah, there was certainly rumors of that. And who knows, had they kept pushing harder on that, maybe we would have seen more and more Canadians pulling their money and losing faith in the institutions. As well, if I was a giant Chinese money laundering billionaire, I might start to get scared and be like, shit, they've got all these powers. They might someday actually come after me. I might decide to stop laundering my money in Canada. So again, anything's possible. Donna Jean says, surely this is comic relief. April Simmons, what is wrong with her? Yeah, that senator, like, I need a new word. You guys let me know, what word should I be using? Like, to say she lives in a different reality or plane of existence, I think doesn't do justice to the difference between my perspective and her perspective. When she's saying that the truckers wanted a race war because they feared they were going to be forced to speak Hebrew if a race war didn't occur. Just like, goddamn. It turns out there's levels of crazy. Aislinn says, JT stated an investigation would occur to see who caused the convoy, both domestic and foreign. He's setting up a narrative. Funny that the only project tactics that they've employed against us before. Yeah. Al says, guys, here's something 100% verified by me. I do private lending through the Windrose Group, very well known in Ontario. And the CEO owner told me yesterday that they received the suspense, a phone call, an email of a list of people from the RCMP asking if any of them are their clients. And they are sending out the same request to all Ontario registered financial investing institutions. That's definitely concerning now, and definitely appreciate you sharing that. That's some wild shit. Project LB52. Hey guys, the politics in Canada are bananas right now. HODL crypto and invest in NFTs, not your keys, not your crypto. Absolutely. Self-custody is more important than ever before. If you guys aren't familiar with Project LB52, that's the NFT project I'm involved in. And in fact, the intro and outro song you guys hear every Maple Pill when I remember to set up my settings right, that's actually done by Dan the Rapper, who's my partner in Project LB52. So if you guys want to make your own custom protest song, I'll be releasing a custom protest song that I co-wrote with Dan. And maybe someday I'll even do my own version of it, but we'll let Dan's version go first because he's a much better rapper than I am. But that'll be coming out in the near future. Al says, maybe the Emergency Act was a beta test for the first round of government ledger cryptocurrencies. They already collected enough info and now gauged real-world timelines on gathering data. Yeah, it's actually crazy to think of how far and how much has changed over the last 2 years. And I know that most people will say the comparisons to Nazi Germany are tiresome and overblown. I'll leave you to your own devices there, but understand that Hitler became chancellor in 1933, but the vast majority of the world wasn't even really starting to think he was crazy or evil, or really starting to see the magnitude of his evil until the 40s. Right? It almost took a decade for the world to really realize how far Germany had fallen. He was Times Man of the Year at one point in time. And to think that we've experienced all this within 2 years here in Canada is absolutely wild. If the anti-hate bill passes, then maybe all of us here in the chat group can be locked up in the same cell together. Absolutely. I look forward to seeing you guys at the Gulag. At least we can have some good conversations, if nothing else. Laugh out loud, preemptively report hate speech. How to we have precogs now, Minority Report. Absolutely. It feels literally like a page from Minority Report. I remember that as being a good movie. And I was thinking about when I was putting together that article, I was like, maybe I should go back and watch it. I wonder if it's good and if there's any insights or gravy in regards to it. Laugh my fucking ass off. If punctuality is racist, then I'm Hitler. Again, it's just so bizarre. And I like, can and does racism exist? I've got no doubt of it. At the same time, do I think you do a giant disservice to the concept of racism when you essentially associate anything and everything you dislike as whiteness or white fragility or a sign of racism? Yeah, I think that honestly you do as much or more damage to your cause than you could do good by focusing on such microaggressions and things of that nature. Ismoff, hate and intense feelings of anger, contempt, and disgust is often the correct response, so it must be outlawed. Yeah, definitely there's times where I hate my government, but I don't know if that actually is deserving of political sanctions or being arrested or fined or anything of that nature. Tom Cruise sucks, but that was a frighteningly good movie. Okay, maybe I will have to check it out. April says, how about just common respect for all instead? Absolutely. Again, I think that if anything, I would love to see a return to a simpler time when social pressures and, social cohesiveness actually drove a lot more things, right? Like if someone's a bad actor, if they say bad things, Again, do I think they should like be put in jail or fined? No, unless they're literally trying to cause an immediate panic, right? Yelling fire in a crowded theater is often used as the example there. But I think we just actually each need to be individually more responsible for who we allow into our social circle. If someone's a fucking asshole, you should call them out as being an asshole and not associate with them. Don't do business with them, right? If you think that someone is crossing a line in regards to their language or their speech, rather than trying to cancel them, you should, post a counterpoint, right? You should ridicule and expose them for their hatred, for their racist thoughts, for their racist comments, their hatred, whatever you want to frame it as. But again, I think that we do a general disservice and to all of society when you start to try and outlaw parts of language, because where do you draw the line? And immediately we end up down the slippery slope. And very soon, I fear that a lot of things that make me, like being punctual, focusing on meritocracy, like believing that I actually am an individual, not part of just a group or a label, will soon be thought as being beyond the pale, right? That'll be disgusting behavior. Again, if you think it is, that's fine. You don't need to be my friend. I don't need to be your friend, but it doesn't mean that you need to actually punish me in a court of law for it. Farzana says, take it coming from a brown person. You're not crazy. Appreciate it. Donna Jean says, what has become of Huawei? Yeah. And that's something that just kind of disappeared, right? April Simmons, Canadian citizens who were protesting peacefully. Yeah, it's wild to see how fast things have escalated here in Canada. Al says, John Oliver is a CIA leftist spoof. Quite possible. Although maybe he's also in the British intelligence, right? He's originally a Brit. Not sure. I have a right to be fat. Is that smart to do? Probably not. Yes, and that's 100% the way it should be approached, right? Like, you shouldn't be jailed or imprisoned for being fat or for making your own individual health choices. But this also applies if you don't want to be injected with something, if you want to wait until more information comes out before making a medical decision or taking a medical procedure. And it's shocking to me how blind it feels like, at least from my perspective, one side is in regards to understanding the logic of like, well, wait, what if the roles were reversed here? Now, again, if you want to place social pressure on individuals, I think that that's allowed, but it shouldn't go to the point where we're literally like hacking companies, doxing people, and trying to incite violence or hatred against them. But again, I'm not saying that should be like the doxing part is illegal because you're literally breaking laws there. But the general concept of inciting hatred, I think, at least in this day and age, it's so nebulous, right? It's so hard to get a full understanding of what's even meant by that, right? Like, it literally now they're saying if Karen talks over everyone, but one of those everyone happens to be black, that's a sign of white fragility. If she thinks that, no, I'm actually just a jerk to everyone, right? I should have the right to be a jerk to every single person. And again, you don't have to associate with me if I am a jerk. Laugh my ass off. Great job yet again, Matt. Keep up the great work. Appreciate it, Leah. I've got a good meme, Matt. I'll send it your way. Awesome, guys. And again, join the Problems for Profits Discord. I appreciate all the interactions we have there. Anyways, I'm going to wrap up here, but I appreciate everyone that jumped in the comments. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Appreciate you guys. Smash the like button, do all that. If you guys want to follow me on Instagram, it's Matt McKeever Unfiltered. So again, for as long as they allow me on Big Tech, I'm going to continue to be here because it is where more eyeballs are, but I am on Rumble. I am on Gab. I am on BitChute. And if there's other platforms you guys really think I should be on, let me know. I'm always open to exploring them, but I can only juggle so many social medias at the same time as well. Appreciate you guys. And let's play ourselves out with our LB52 or Project LB52 custom protest song.
Asking blue pill, red pill, corporate press, I've had my fill. I'm just a simple chat, believing in my own will. Web fire, math table, scheming, this is no drill. Haters masking boosted, but still with no chill. Need to come and take it if you wanna mess with my hill. We've been 3D